Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my Legendary Lord tier list based on your votes in all of the polls that I've been doing. So I did the racial poll, I did polls for every single race in the game. In some cases, I had to do multiple polls for a particular race because there's that many Legendary Lords for certain races. Skaven, Lizardmen, for instance, as an example, Dwarves, High Elves, and so on and so forth. But this is what people voted on. Now, here's the methodology. I'm going to take the data from all the Legendary Lord polling, combine it with the race tier list that was also based on your votes. Plenty of people voted for that, and the sentiments that I'm seeing in the polls are sentiments that people have expressed for a very, very long time in many polls that I've done for like 2 years. Polling on YouTube, just to give you guys an idea of why it's useful for content creators, it's engagement. The reason we do polling, beyond figuring out where people stand, is that it drives engagement on our channels. So it is useful to do polling from that particular perspective. So I've done quite a few polling. I'm not surprised necessarily by most of the things, though I certainly am surprised by some of the campaigns that ended up on the top and some of the campaigns that ended up at the bottom. And for the record, if you think that this list in any way is reflective of how I feel, sure, there's things I do agree with on this list. There's many things I also disagree with. I'd say, I don't know, 60-40 I disagree with it, more or less, something along those lines. So let's start with the Beastmen. But before I actually get into the tier list itself, I originally had the idea of using some AI art for the sake of a thumbnail. Then I realized, yeah, there's some pretty good images in-game I can use. Because that's a problem, by the way. There's some Legendary Lords in certain races that do actually lack a good amount of quality in images. But with the new intro screens that CA has done, things are much better in that respect. And holy crap, you realize Catherine has some amazing shots in her campaign intro for Realms of Chaos. But I spent quite a few hours making some AI art, and I just wanted to share it. This is Catherine, according to ChatGPT. Now, to be clear, ChatGPT can't use copyrighted material, so this is its interpretation of Catherine without breaking copyright. That's one of the main limiting aspects over here. Let me know what you guys think about all of this, with the whole AI art aspect, or this particular image, because this took hours and many attempts, many iterations. It's not like making an image like this is simple. Anyone who's used Midjourney or anything like that, Stable Diffusion or DALL-E would tell you that. But anyway, back to the tier list, starting with the Beastmen. Now, how do you rate the Beastmen? Well, let's start with Tarax for the Beastmen. So, the Beastmen got a D tier in terms of their racial polling. But Tarax won the overwhelming number of votes. So where should I put him? Legend did the recent tier list where he put them in S tier. I wouldn't put them that high, but I can certainly understand why he'd do so from a faction strength perspective. Although I think Legend is focused a bit too much on the playstyle he chooses, and also he says things like Skarbrand is the strongest Legendary Lord in the game by far if you're playing in a non-cheesy way, and then you look at how Legend plays Skarbrand, and it's like, yeah, that is cheesy as hell. I'll get to that later. Tarax is actually a more legitimate choice from my perspective, but would I put Tarax in S tier based on that? Or would I argue, firmly so, that basically Tarax is carrying the entirety of the Beastmen race? Because he is. He got over 80% of the vote. It wasn't even a competition. The other Legendary Lords of the Beastmen might not exist. So what I'm going to do in Tarax is I'm going to put him in C tier because he did win, even if there wasn't really any competition. There isn't any competition. Like with the Beastmen, it's very clear that if people are playing a Beastmen campaign, they're playing a Tarax campaign. I think some of the things to understand about how people voted. People overwhelmingly voted, and this is fairly consistent, people voted based on the campaigns that they find the most interesting. But it's not the campaigns that are, but overwhelmingly so, it's not the longest the campaigns that are best in the long term, like the Empire Builders, Moravia Larial, nor is it the campaigns that do the best in the early game. It's kind of like that mid ground, the mid game, those kind of campaigns. And people care about design and fun. They don't care about power as much, either in battle or in campaign. Nor do they care about battles as much as they care about good campaign design. Tarax does certainly have that. He has more mechanics than all the other legendary lords of the Beastmen. He has the movement range, he has the extra dread, he gets extra unit capacity, especially for Minotaurs, he gets hero capacity. He just has a lot of mechanics that work. Like, the entire Beastmen race, their rework is built around him. You look at some of the research things, those are things that, yeah, you can acquire with other things, but they're so much easier to do with Tarax. Like, win several battles in a single turn. Who do you think is going to unlock that? Tarax is. So C tier for Tarax. I do think the Beastmen don't necessarily need a rework. They need an update to fit better within the Warhammer 3 meta. Or maybe Warhammer 3 needs a better late game situation. Regardless of that. Then we have Khazrak. Yeah, Khazrak is going to go in F tier. He got very few votes. He's like the generic character of the Beastmen. And in general with the Beastmen race pulling, I also think it's coming down to the fact that Tarax is part of a really good DLC with Oxyatl. And it's a good value DLC. The Beastmen race pack is not good value right now. You get everything other except the other legendary lords if you buy the Silence and the Fury. So I think that's really driving down the votes for the Beastmen. Then you get Malagor, who's going to go in D tier, just kind of like that middle ground. Like, he didn't, like, out of the other three legendary lords beside Tarax, he did the best, though it's like insignificant number of votes really over there. But yeah, Malagor, middle ground, relatively safe position, powerful casting ability, easy access to magic. He does have some benefits. And then Mogr, F-, with respect to Mogr. Genuinely unpopular campaign. In fact, I would dare say, like, Mogr did so poorly that he could deserve a Daniel tier. But he didn't quite do so poorly compared to Khazrak or Malagor. He did get the last spot. Mogr is just a meme, really. There's nothing more to say on that. And speaking about memes, we move on to Bretonnia. Albrecht, Daniel tier. Like, Bretonnia, I'll be honest with you guys, I am a bit surprised at how poorly Bretonnia did as a race. Like, they got F- in the race tier list. And Albrecht, he got a pathetic amount of votes. It's a combination of jungle warfare, with Albrecht being the least interesting character for the Bretonnians, and just not having a really great campaign. It's a bit of a shame. He actually has access to the knights faster than anyone else. Better knights. It can work if it wasn't in Lustria. I'm tempted to play an old world campaign with him, assuming he has a better start in old world once that gets updated. Then we get the Fey Enchantress. So the Fey Enchantress, I'm going to put her in F-, because she also did very poorly in the poll. Basically, Bretonnia is dominated by two lords, one up far above the other. So when you look at the Fey Enchantress, as I stated, it's not the campaigns that do best early on. What does the Fey Enchantress give you? Casualty replenishment? Who gives a shit? If it was a race like the High Elves, who can't get that so easily, sure. But Bretonnia does have easy access. They have the best growth, insane level of economy. They're not going to struggle for casualty replenishment because they have that on their casters, which you want to get anyway. Hell, Lewin starts with one. So there's little benefit in that respect. Even from a Confederation standpoint, she's not really worth that much. She's kind of mediocre caster, and I prefer personally having melee lords leading my armies and casters supporting that. Besides, even with that casualty replenishment she gets, you're still going to want a caster lord in her army. So basically, that's going to nullify some of the benefits she has. She has a Grail Guardian benefit, but it's insignificant. And as for the extra peasants, that's irrelevancy. It's only going to matter for the first 20 turns. People overwhelmingly did not vote for lords that do exceptionally well in that respect. And besides, it doesn't matter, again, because there's other options available there. Lewin Leonkar. This is an interesting perspective. So Lewin, I think he's going to go in D tier. He got the largest share of the votes, a clear majority of the votes for Bretonnia. I personally don't like his campaign. His faction effects are not great. But I guess if you're going to play a quintessential Bretonnian character focused on knights, Lewin works. He's really strong in battle, the strongest in battle. And he has a bunch of benefits in his skill line. Not great faction effects, not great starting position, but at least he starts with a caster, so I guess there's that. Then we have Rapunz, who's going to go in F, just middle ground for the Bretonnians over there. I think Rapunz does deserve a higher level, because she actually doesn't have an annoying research tree. She can recruit knights from the beginning. They're knights errant. They're not great. They're not like Alberic, but I guess people don't necessarily care about that as much as I thought they would. Chaos Dwarves. So Chaos Dwarves really are an indication of where people stand, because like with many other races, it's not the campaigns that do the best in the long term or early game, it's the campaigns that do best in kind of like the 20-60 turn range. And so we get to Astrogoth. Astrogoth is an S tier lord, but that's not because he won the poll. He came in second. And truth be told, I could put a bunch more tiers over here, F minus, all that kind of stuff, or S+++. So Astrogoth is S tier. He's not the best. He's really good in the early game. He gets that hero capacity. He's interesting in battle. He deals with Grimgor relatively quickly, though that's less of a problem now that Tamarkan is there to snap Grimgor in half. Like, Tamarkan actually hard counters Grimgor in the AI, weirdly enough. I guess the auto-resolve benefit suits him. And even if Grimgor wins, you get more time. So it's less of a benefit. Hero capacity, yeah, great, but his faction effects just aren't fantastic. Like, they're control, who gives a damn about control when playing Chaos Dwarves? Because you get Cast Corruption, which gives you control. You get the labor action that gives you control. You have plenty of ways of maintaining control as the Chaos Dwarves. You do not need a faction effect for control. Like, the other two get better benefits. Zaytan gets caravans. Drazov gets industry. Astrogoth gets control. If he could gain research with every tower, different situation, but he just has a boring faction effect. He's useful to confederate, absolutely, but you'll always guarantee that confederation. Then we have Drazov, the best Chaos Dwarf campaign according to our votes. This is one area where I do agree with. Drazov has this nice middle ground between the campaigns. He has an interesting early game. It's not quite as good as Astrogoth, but certainly compelling enough. Astrogoth, by the way, has a linear path, whereas Drazov has a lot of choices from the very beginning. And it's that choice that apparently matters to a lot of people. And then he has a good mid-game and a good late game. Not the strongest late game, but still, he's also probably the best caster in the entire game on an individual level. Someone like Gelt has better magical ability faction-wide, but Astrogoth with his Flames of Asgore is ridiculous. And finally, Zaytan the Black, who's in A tier. He's got this weird campaign dynamic where when you're playing him, you've got Grimgor in your back, and that is a major threat. You can deal with him, right? But your campaign objectives are to go east, and your early game suffers significantly, and even your mid game suffers significantly because you start with the tier 1 settlement. You can make it work, you get more labors than anyone else. Late game potential, he is the strongest, by far. But that early game and mid game problems do drag him down, so he's going to get A tier, according to your votes. Then we move on to Dark Elves. Dark Elves as a race got C tier. And we start with Hellebron. I feel bad for Hellebron, I'll be honest with you, because she got splattered. By the way, Enchantress better than their Rapunz. Just adjusting them, right? Like, the ones furthest to the left are the ones that did the best, just so you know. So, Hellebron got the lowest amount of votes. I think with Hellebron, part of the reason is Queen of the Crown is a deeply unpopular DLC, so that's dragging her down. A lot of people hate dealing with slaves as Dark Elves. I think it's exaggerated. And none deal with slaves more so than Hellbrand. Again, I do believe it's exaggerated. Her rogue army that she summons is a gimmick at best, an annoyance, or genuine harm in your campaign at worst. If you join the wars it declares on various factions, don't, by the way. She does have certainly a strong melee build, but there's a better lord, much better lords actually, multiple lords that are better than her. So yeah, F-, maybe even Daniel tier, because she did that freaking poorly. Now, I think a lot of people underestimate Hellbrand. It's interesting to think about Hellbrand, because for a long time in multiplayer, she was the strongest lord in Warhammer 2. Now, I don't really know what the multiplayer meta is for Warhammer 3. Personally, I don't even care. I focus on the campaign side of things. But from the very worst, we get to the very best. Lowkiller Felhart, either A+ or S-. I'm going to put him in S tier. He won. He won by double digits compared to everyone else. And I think Lowkiller really shows. Choice, good mid-game. He does have that. Variety in his campaign. He does have. And just enough power, but not so much that you're overwhelmed by it. He does have weakness. The climate situation is a weakness. He doesn't have as much money as, say, Morathi, for instance. But he does gain a lot of slaves. It is a campaign that works. It does grant you an enormous level of variety from Nagron to Cathay, because you do get Karen Carr through Confederation. It is a level of power. And I understand why people like Lowkiller. I like Lowkiller. For a long time, he was my favorite campaign. Then I discovered Morathi for the Dark Elves. Then a choice I really disagree with, Malekith. Now, Malekith came in second. Malekith is going to go in A tier. I never thought I'd see the day where so many people would vote for Malekith, but it did happen. In fact, I could dare argue that he's ahead of Tzeentch, because far fewer people voted for Tzeentch comparatively. For the Dark Elves, there was a genuine competition. Lowkiller won, but geez, Malekith's campaign, I guess it's the iconic campaign, and yes, faction leaders do tend to do better in the polling. That doesn't mean they win, for the record, but they do get an advantage. And I wonder how much of that advantage translated in the votes. But yeah. Fairly generic lord for the Dark Elves. He does get an upkeep benefit for the basic units, but you want to use Black Arc, so the only benefit you're getting is the Dark Shard one. And hell, a lot of people would even argue you don't want to use that anyway. You want to use Shades, which is just going to nullify all the benefits he gets. And a diplomacy benefit, considering the way diplomacy works, just not a great situation, but hey, this is what people voted for. Crappy start position, though at least you can make allies with Grumbrindle. Malice Darkblade. He's going to go in C tier. And he's going to be behind Tarks. Like, really powerful lord, undeniably so, but just unsatisfying campaign. And always been an unsatisfying campaign ever since he was added in the game. I have owned this DLC for a very, very long time. Like, ever since it came out. I can tell you I never played a campaign as Malice in Warhammer 2. I played them quite a bit in Warhammer 3, of course, right? Different focus. I wasn't covering Warhammer 2. I am covering Warhammer 3. But just, like, really an unappealing campaign on virtually every level for a lot of people. Just because you're powerful, and this is probably an indication that just because a campaign has power does not make it good in the eyes of the community. Then Morathi. I feel bad for this one, but she's going to go in B tier. And quite a few people, I imagine, could say, you're stretching it, right? Because Dark Elves, they get C tier. That's fair. But she's going to go in B tier. Like, I could drop Morathi, Malekith, and Lowkiller by 1 tier each. Let me know what you guys think about that particular aspect. But yeah, with Morathi, she does have a great deal of strength. I think it's the linearity of her campaign, because every time you play their campaign, you kind of want to do the same thing over and over again. You figure out the optimal path, you deal with the Sankhya, you ally Mazdamundi, you conquer Nagron, then Ulthuan, you ally whoever you ally. There's not much choice. She's powerful, but power isn't everything. I do certainly believe she's a more interesting campaign to play than freaking Malekith, but that's my opinion on the subject. But an opinion I do share with the community is that freaking Rakarth goes in F tier. Maybe if I'm being really generous with interpreting those results. But no, Rakarth is a bad campaign. Like, I do agree with this. From my perspective, like, I would put Hellebron higher. Like, I'd probably put her D tier. I'd drop Malekith 2 freaking tiers, if not 3. But at least on that point, I do agree with people. Rakarth's campaign, you gotta understand the dynamics of Dark Elves. Dark Elves excel at aggression. They need to, right? The slave mechanic, their rights, various things they're doing, they need slaves. If you're not fighting battles, you're not gaining slaves. If you're not gaining slaves, it's not that your economy stops, it's your campaign progress stops, because you can't do rights, for instance. And Rakarth literally has an objective to gain slaves to get Karen Carr. So he actually ends up, like, he's in this race with Lokir, but Lokir always freaking wins it in that particular race. Like, if 2 players were playing Lokir and Rakarth, Lokir would win hands fucking down with respect to that race for Karen Carr. And even if you could get it ahead of Lokir, that just means Lokir fucked up, and you're still going to get it slower than him. By which point, Leifhanar might have pushed it to the very limit. So it is a problem in that particular respect. It's not a great situation in any way, shape, or form in his campaign. And his beast mechanic, like, it's really Lustria with Anton underway. Lustria in general is not great, and virtually all the Lustrian campaigns did very poorly. It should be pointed out, all of the freaking Lustrian campaigns did very poorly. Not much more to say on this. I think I preferred them when he started in Albion in Warhammer 2. Then we go into the Dwarves. Oh yes, the precious little Dwarves. So for the Dwarves, we start with Belegar, who's going to be going in B tier, according to your votes. Not that many people voted for him in the Dwarf racial polling. The campaign that won by a ridiculous, overwhelming amount. I think the problem with Belegar, not to just focus too much on him, but the problem with Belegar comes down to this. His campaign is fucking misery. Dealing with plus 50% upkeep for the most important part of the campaign, the early game, that journey to Caracade Peaks, is not a great experience. And once you do get Caracade Peaks, you just dominate. So I think there is that kind of power gap that does drag him down. He's also far more to confederate than to actually play. His faction effects, yes, Caracade Peaks does give you faction effects, but by that point the campaign is over. So do you really care? Not quite as much. But he is absolutely worth confederating. He is not worth playing. He's also the most durable of the Dwarf Legendary Lords. His faction will stay alive the longest out of all of them. Then we have to talk about Grombrindal. Poor Grombrindal. He came in third. I would probably say he's the best A-tier campaign, but yeah, he came in third on the racial polling. And not a close third. No, not even close to a close third. He's powerful. He's a very iconic character, but he doesn't I guess he just doesn't feel like Grombrindal should in the lore. Grombrindal is all about traveling the world, helping the dwarves in their hour of need, whereas in Warhammer 3, you just play him to hunt down the Dark Elves, which he never does, as far as I know, in the lore. I mean, dwarves in general just don't get that many opportunities to deal with the Dark Elves. So, while they do hate them for many good reasons, I think it's the linearity of this campaign that drags people away from it. It is a powerful campaign. You have insane power for a skill line, but you get that through Confederation. You don't really benefit from playing Grombrindal on a faction effect level, linear campaign, iconic character to be sure, the best Legendary Lord before the Dwarf rework, but he's still very strong. I would certainly put him in S tier, but not according to your votes. And again, that linearity. And speaking about the campaign that's exactly the opposite, the campaign that got the largest share of the votes for the race that got the largest amount of the votes is Malachi McKeeson. If I had multiple tiers of S tier, this would be S tier plus 4. This guy dominated his competition. Some people would say, oh, it's just because it's a new campaign. That is not true. Like, if you think that just because Thrones of Decay is recent and that's the reason Malachi won, no. The reason he won is because he genuinely has a dynamic campaign, an interesting campaign, a great deal of flavor, lots of uniqueness to it, to his army, to his faction, to his missions. If you want to make a mission-focused campaign, this is the standard that Creative Assembly should follow going forward. Really powerful armies, but it's not the power. It's that dynamic aspect of it, the variety you have in this campaign. This is a campaign, just to give you an idea. Legend of Total War played this campaign, and he freaking loved it. And he wasn't a fan of the Dwarves before that. Like, this is easily, from my perspective, the best campaign to play in the game, flat out. Even if you don't care at all about the Dwarves, and I understand why, right? They do lack cavalry, they lack certain aspects in campaign and battle that other races do have, but this campaign, they nailed it. The fantasy of Gotrek and Felix realized. It's a shame they don't have voice acting for Gotrek and Felix for this campaign, but yeah, really good campaign. And then we go from the best to the very worst among the dwarves. It is Foric Armbrow. I couldn't even argue putting him D tier, but I'm just going to put him in C. The worst C campaign, maybe, so far. The thing about Foric is the way the dwarves work right now is they work together, you confederate them, you get their effect, you get the lord effects and all that. Foric doesn't care about that. He has the worst grudge situation, he has the worst starting position, and he has the worst faction dynamic of all of them because you're going straight up a line from the south to the north to get all those parts. Not a great campaign dynamic in any way. It's better now that confederations no longer screw you over in terms of grudges to Confederate Legendary Lords, but still, not a great campaign. And climate is not particularly great. You get jungle. Who really wants to embrace the jungle? Apparently, very few people actually do, if the polling that I did is any indication of it. So yeah, Foric. What's the worst campaign when the game came out because of the bugs on grudges? Now is still the worst campaign in the game for the dwarves at the moment. I really think they need an update for him. Then we have Thorgrim, who is ahead of Astrogoth, ahead of Lokir. He did decently in the racial polling for the dwarves. Okay, let's not mince words. Malachi crushed every single other person in the racial polling of the dwarves. It's not even funny. Like, it's one thing, for a bad race or a race with questionable merits for, say, a legendary lord like Tarax to win, right? It's another thing for Malachi to get 60% of the freaking votes when I did a poll for him, Thorgrim, and Grombrindle as the top 3. And I think if I could have done a poll, he would have probably, Thoric wouldn't have even existed on that list. But with Thorgrim, yeah, he's the king of the dwarves, he's the racial leader, and that's going to appeal to people. He gets the best grudge seller armies, he gets more of those units from the very beginning through his skill line. So he is in a good spot. Malachi is just better, a lot better, though, as a campaign. Better climate, better campaign dynamic, but, Thorgrim is what a lot of people think of when they play the dwarves. So if you are a big dwarf fan, then yeah, maybe this is the campaign for you. Then we have Ungrim. Oh, poor Ungrim. He genuinely was the worst campaign once, Foric's grudge issue was fixed initially. Now he's in a better position, but yeah, people still don't care for him. Because people don't care for Slayers in general. CA did buff them. They didn't change his faction effects, so whatever, basically. You want to play with Slayers with Ungrim? You don't need to play Ungrim's faction. I'm not joking. In the most genuine sense. The benefits for Slayers come from his Lord effects and the Demon Slayer skill line. They don't come from Ungrim himself, his faction effects. Oh, a recruitment benefit. Who gives a crap? Apparently very few people do. It's not as bad as Belegar or Foric, but yeah, it's better. You can do it. It can work, but just not the most appealing dwarf playstyle in the game at the moment. Then we get to the Empire. The poor, poor Empire. We start with Gelt, who's actually worse than Zaytan, considering the number of votes. For me, Gelt is my favorite campaign of the Empire right now. The effort CA put in just making those spells from a visual standpoint, bloody hell, that's impressive. I was just looking at those things, it's wow, that's amazing. But It's certainly a cheesy campaign, and people don't care much for that. If there's another thing on this list that is clear, people don't give a shit about cheesy campaigns. And Gelt is the quintessential cheesy campaign. He embraces the cheese. He is the cheese incarnate. It's fun, to be sure. It's a lot of fun. But I can understand why he wasn't voted so highly. Then we have Elspeth. She came in second for the Empire. She has the best armies of the Empire, no question about that. I think what drags her down is that she has a more linear campaign. Deal with the initial vampires, deal with the Greenskins, ally Belegar, go beat up Blood. And then you have some choices, but campaign's over. Compared to the number one campaign, which is Karl Franz. Karl Franz so far, he's second in line. Because Empire got second place, Karl Franz got the largest share of the votes of the Empire Legendary Lords. A clear majority of the votes, 54% last I looked. So with Karl Franz, you have that dynamic experience. You don't have the unique units or the unique magic that Gelt has. The unique units of Elspeth, the magic of Gelt, you don't have that. But you do have a great deal of flexibility. You do feel like the Emperor of the Empire. Finally. This campaign actually was the worst campaign for the Empire ever since the game launched. I'm not joking on that. It was always better to play Gelt because Karl was easier to unlock. Yeah, you got campaign movement range with Karl, but you start with a mage, a pretty freaking powerful mage with Gelt, and you could get Karl far easier than it was to get Gelt. I mean, sure, Volkmar was never freaking great, but that's a discussion for just a bit later. Because first, we do need to talk about Marcus Wolfhard. He's going to go in D tier, the lowest share of the votes. People have hated this campaign since it came out. Beast and Hunter is one of the worst DLCs according to the Reddit poll on DLCs that people did. So it stands to reason Marcus Wolfhard. And the thing is, that DLC is no longer necessary. It used to be because archers, huntsmen were important. Huntsmen generals, potentially. But now, if you're playing the Empire, the only DLC you need is Friends of Freaking Decay. Because engineers, right? You gain very few benefits right now from owning the other two Empire DLCs. And I think that affects Marcus Wolfhard. Horrible campaign design, Lustria, hostility. I can keep going. There's no point to talk about it. Everyone knows Marcus Wolfhard is not in a great position. Then we get C tier, Volkmar. Before Franz Decay, quote-unquote, the best Imperial campaign, but now one of the worst. Not quite as bad as Volkmar. He doesn't have the fucking hostility mirror, but he does genuinely have the worst starting position out of all of them. The least interesting starting position, the least interesting campaign dynamics. Books of Nagash are not a fun campaign dynamic. And the fact that CA gave them to Volkmar and Manfred just indicates to me that they didn't realize what was going to happen. Then again, they did rush Immortal Empires. Yeah, Volkmar needs an update. I think, limiting his Electricon State Troopers behind getting those freaking Books of Nagash. This is actually the worst Books of Nagash campaign because with Manfred and with the Tomb Kings, you can at least ignore them, right? To some degree. You do want to get them on Manfred. But with Volkmar, you want to play this campaign? You got to get those books. Which sucks. Plain and simple. Oh, I enjoy going to Wolf 1. Oh, I also enjoy dealing with randomized book effects. That is freaking great. Not really. Moving on to Grand Cathay. Grand Cathay got B tier. And the lord that's in the middle for the pulling of Grand Cathay is Miao Ying. Now, I'm not quite sure how much you want on the merits of she's the iconic leader, she was in the trailer, all that. She does get the ammo benefit. Personally, I wonder if there's something else. If there was anything I was willing to discount in terms of the polling, it would be Miao Ying's placement. Not anything else, believe me. I do consider everything else how people feel from a gameplay standpoint. With her, it really boils down to reasons, two big reasons, and certain aspects of the community that you really don't want to dive in. Let's just say you don't want to check out some of the mods of Miao Ying. I was talking with someone about this, and he's like, well, she's an iconic character, she's the generic one, all that, and then I pointed out, yeah, take a look at what's out there for Miao Yang. You might understand where I'm coming from. Don't, for your own sanity, though. Then, of course, we have Yan Bo, A tier, best mechanics by far, more mechanics than the other two. He wins a vote. But A tier, okay, I accept the results. I don't like any of the Cathay campaigns. I would rate Cathay as a race lower, actually, in general. I put them all in C tier. Maybe on Bo B. I know I've made different tier lists and all that, but I just think Cathay, like if I was to do a race tier list and legendary lore tier list, I put Cathay a lot freaking lower, like D tier for Miao Yang, C for Yanbo, all that. It's just really, really freaking dull. And then finally in C tier, Xiaoming, lowest share of the votes. I guess people just don't care much for him. He has a lot more power than Miao Yang. He has a lot more possibilities than Miao Yang. Diplomacy, faction start, all that. This is why, by the way, I would consider Miao Yang's position in the polling kind of legitimate a bit. Because, reasons. Basically, I think that's why Xiaoming lost, because from a gameplay standpoint, he should be higher than her. He has a better campaign start. He has a better campaign structure. He has better campaign effects. Why in the hell did people vote for Miao Yang over Xiaoming? I don't know. Well, I do know. I'd probably rather not think about that too much. Greenskins, next up. Starting with the worst one. Yes, the worst campaign, according to your votes, is Azag the Slaughter. This guy, okay, he's going to go in D tier. Greenskins got A tier in terms of racial voting, but Azag barely got any votes. He does have a good amount of power, but, buffing big guns is nothing special, and Black Orcs are very close by, and, Greenskins have insane levels of growth. He does have a sacking benefit, which doesn't matter because you get a lot of money anyway. He does have a lot more diplomatic power than a lot of people give him credit for. Imagine allying Vlad and Kislev. Yeah, you can do that as Azag. You can conquer the entire empire and then ally the empire. Yeah, Azag's possibilities in a campaign are pretty good. I think he just needs some uniqueness to appeal to more people. But then we go from the worst to the best. And by the way, the order is alphabetical, just so you know, with respect to this. Like the way things are arranged. Like I'm taking these images from the bottom, put them in here. It's alphabetical down there. Or at least I think it is. But yeah, Grimgor. S tier, best campaign of the Greenskins by far. And it's interesting to think about Grimgor because he doesn't have any special faction effects. I mean, he gets Black Orc Big Bosses faction-wide. Okay, fair enough. He still has to get to tier 4 to recruit them or to increase capacity. It was better when Tarmokan's trait was in the game, and then CA nerfed it into Oblivion, but still, exceptional campaign. Really iconic for Greenskin. Diverse as well, because you have a large range of enemies. Warriors of Chaos, Chaos Dwarves, Ogres. And if you get tired of that, there's Skaven, Dwarves, name it. There's a lot of possibilities in this campaign. And I think that this is a campaign that Creative Assembly has always treated well when they cared about the Greenskins, not the period when they left them in the gutter for a very, very long time before Warden and the Punch. Then we have Grom. By the way, like with Lokir, Grimgor would be S-, but yeah, Grimgor is better than Lokir. Actually, I think Grimgor would qualify as a legitimate S tier. Lokir, you can question me on that. Then we have Grom the Punch, who's probably better than all of the others except Grombrindle. Really unique, the most unique faction effects. Really interesting campaign in terms of conquering with one. He does suffer from the climate situation, but yeah, Warden the Punch is the most beloved DLC in the entire series. The votes show it, and I think that's reflected in how well Grom did. He came nowhere near Grimgor, to be certain on that, but he crushed everyone else. So he's going to go in A tier, where the race landed. Then we have Skarsnik. Honestly, I would have put him in Daniel tier, but apparently you guys don't think about this as much as I do. Skarsnik is going to go in C tier. Limiting your recruitment in a campaign is not appealing, CA. Don't do that again. That's all I'm going to say on fucking Skarsnik. I've said enough. Like, I've said too much. Like, Skarsnik is so worthless, he's not even worth fucking confederating. If you confederate Skarsnik, you're doing it for the territory, not him. You disband him, you ignore him, you never use him in a fucking battle. A generic goblin shaman is a better army leader than fucking Skarsnik. And that is not a joke. That is not an exaggeration. That is a fact. That is how worthless Skarsnik is. Because, like, oh, he's a melee combatant with some army buffs. Yeah, for ambushing when he doesn't have stock stats. So, yeah, throw that garbage away. Oh, but he gets more goblins than anyone else. Let me tell you this. When I'm playing a Greenskin campaign, and mind you, this is just my opinion, but people did vote Skarsnik very poorly. But when I'm playing a Greenskin campaign, let me tell you what is the one thing I don't give a crap about. Money. Oh, you can have more armies. I don't care. I'm saying at 10 fucking stacks with Grimgor in 20 turns. I'm saying I'm more with Grom. I have so many armies that have so much upkeep that I'm so in the red I can't even see the bottom of the purse that I'm throwing away every turn. And I don't give a shit, because I fight one battle, that's enough money to keep me going for a turn, at least, if not multiple turns. So Skarsnik's Goblin benefits, yeah, they're good in the early game, if any indication, as I said. The early game doesn't mean shit. The Battlelands is also not a particularly great area for campaigns in general. And that is reflected in Warzag's polling. Truth be told, I could put them all on the same tier. Warzag, I'll just say this. He has a good Lord effects for Savage Orcs, but he doesn't have good faction effects. He should be the faction leader that focuses on Savage Orcs, but outside of his own army, you just use generic Greenskins. I would argue it's better than Skarsnik, but, well, people apparently favored the runt a bit more. Though I understand why people dislike Warzag and Izak. To be fair, they were very, very close together in the polling, so make of that what you will. Getting to the High Elves, this part is going to be painful. Like, I agree fully with the greenskin aspect. Well, mostly. That's what I would change. Mostly. But with the High Elves, geez, guys, you guys really hate some really good campaigns. Well, starting with Alariel. So High Elves, to be certain, got B tier in the polling. Alariel is F tier. She's very strong. She's the empire builder of the High Elves. She gets more control, more growth than anyone else. She has the best diplomatic relations of all the High Elves. She gets the freaking Sword of Cain and nullifies every single negative effect. And you voted her second last. You know, make of that what you will. I disagree. Like it breaks my heart enough about Rapunzel, but Alariel, holy shit. I guess it really comes down, I think, with Queen of the Crown being a really horrible DLC from a community standpoint, so both of them are really hated. Hellbrand more than Alariel. Alariel at least got some votes. Hellbrand might as well not have fucking existed. But yeah. Then we have... This is gonna be painful. Alifanar. Fucking hell, guys. And I can't even put him best in C tier because you guys voted for Tarax overwhelmingly as opposed to Alifanar. Jesus. Okay. This is a Skaven campaign for the High Elves. This is a biblical level of power. This is a fun campaign because you have so much diversity of climate possibilities. Yes, it doesn't have the long-term potential because not being able to take all fun screws you over. I get that. I understand that fully. But this low, compared to who's above him, especially, yeah, that's not great. Elfarian. Oh boy. Elfarian is in B tier. Truth be told, he came very close to first position. I would have put him in A tier. I would have disagreed with the choice, but it's your choice. I think Elfarian has a huge amount of potential in his campaign, which is never fucking realized because of climate limitations, dual star position, and all that. it is an iconic character. Warden and Punch is a popular DLC. All of those things apply, and that's the reason he did so well. He almost dethroned the #1 spot, just like a couple of percentage points. And he would have been A tier if that had happened. But seriously though, this campaign, I've tried playing it. I love the character. I dislike fighting a bunch of meaningless battles just to capture a lord. Fair enough, there's mods for that, but here's the thing. It just kind of falls flat from my perspective. It should be this great rivalry and this great battle between him and Grom, and it just never happens. You never fight Grom in this campaign. You did in Warhammer 2, not here though, which is gigantic shame. So I think CA needs to update the campaign and also rework the High Elves. Not rework the campaign mechanics, just make them more available. Someone put it the best in a video I did on Alfarian recently. It's weird the Homelander legendary lord is not focused on the homeland. And it's true, he's not. He's focused on purging the Battlelands. I mean, you focus on Wolf 1, but you get screwed over on Confederation because of that dual start. Because you're gonna have limitations on what you can do in Wolf 1. This is, by the way, why I'd vote Alariel, because she can confederate all of Wolf 1 faster than either Therian or Elfarian or anyone else. Just putting it out there, guys. Then Emmerich. Yeah, Emmerich is behind Morathi, I would say. But certainly above Unger. Came in third. People like them dragons, I guess. Emmerich is a meme. I guess that's why people voted for him. Let me say this, though. The most popular, or one of the most popular videos I did last year, do you know what it was? It wasn't anything related to Chaos Dwarves directly. It was a video about Emmerich's new starting situation with the rework in Darklands. People love freaking Emmerich. He is playable now in Warhammer 2. He's pure Israel. Let's just say starting playing against Skaven, Tzeentch specifically, on fucking Legendary in Warhammer 2 and now having traded High Elves was, well, it was an experience, suffice to say. I'm glad that's over. But yeah, he came in third. Decent enough spot. He does get more nobles than anyone else for his special skill line. He doesn't have frozen climate. He's actually in a better position to control the Battlelands and Darklands in the mountains than freaking Alfarian. Maybe Alfarian should have mountain climate and Emmerich can fuck off back to Ulfwan. Just my idea. Then we have Teclis. Oof. F tier. No, sorry. Not F tier. Not F tier minus. Not Daniel. Daniel minus. Like, there are some legendary lords like Albric that barely got any votes. Hellbrand got what, 5% of the vote? Teclis got 2% of the vote. And you can't say there wasn't competition because there were some very close votes in the High Elf situation and in other races. But yeah, Teclis might as well not exist in the game. He might as well have never existed in the game for all his worth. You never confederate him because he's too far away and he's annoying. You don't have good relations with him. His campaign just sucks. Like, you consider Gelt or Elspeth. Those are caster campaigns. Or Drazif. Great caster. Teclis? He doesn't feel like Teclis in the lore. And by the way, Teclis is one of the most important character in Warhammer Fantasy. Probably the most important character compared, only eclipsed by freaking Sigmar himself, considering all he did. He set up the colleges of magic in the Empire. He brought about the fucking end times. You think Arcan brought an end to the world? Do you think Manfred brought an end to the world? This prick did that. Maybe that's something that people voted him down on. No, it's just a shitty campaign that combines the worst aspects of the High Elves and none of the good. There's a great variety in High Elven campaigns. Teclis does not have that. Jungle warfare, even if it's in the Southlands as opposed to Lustria, it's not great. Oh, but the best part is, you'll be going to Lustria. Enjoy. Also enjoy dealing with the fucking Chaos Wasteland with Kairos. Yay, that's great. That's fun. No. I mean, just keep in mind, this is based on your votes. I agree fully on Teclis. I don't agree on Hellbrun or, well, I agree on certainly on the Fey Enchantress. There's so many things I disagree with. Even in terms of the campaigns that did the best. But Therian gets a clear win in A tier, alongside Malekith, his natural rival. Therian is an example of a campaign that Creative Assembly has never needed to improve because they fucking nailed it the first time they did it. Like, he is, in many ways, the quintessential High Elf campaign. If you want to play a High Elf campaign, Tyrion is great. He's great for beginners. He's great for intermediate levels. He's great for skilled players. He is the guy that will conquer the fucking world. Don't get me wrong. I think you can do it as a Lariel. But Tyrion has so much power, so much potential. It is crazy. Like, you don't need the Sword of Cain. He is the fucking Sword of Cain. Great lord, great campaign, very iconic to his character, to the High Elves in general. Really works. Just flat out works. It would be nice to get some updates, some unique mechanics, absolutely. But it is a campaign that flat out works for the High Elves. And then we get to Skarbrand. Now, actually, let's dispense with the trash, first and foremost. Daniel tier. Nothing more is going to be said on that. If I need to say anything on the reasons Daniel is going so low, I'm wasting my time. I think if there's anything everyone agrees with on this list, everyone, like 99.9% of people, no, 99.99% of people would agree with this, that he is the worst campaign in the game. He gets units every DLC. He doesn't get the faction mechanics reworked. Be'lakor should have been a Demons of Chaos, a legendary lord, because that's what he is in the lore. But it's like, see, cared so little about him. Then we have Skarbrand. Oh dear. Let the hate flow. Let the hate flow through you, because it is gonna flow through a lot of people. He's F tier. Skarbrand is an F tier campaign. There, I said it. I didn't even vote for him. Personally, I would have put him higher. Legend considers this the best campaign in the game. I don't know what you're doing over there, Legend, but gotta disagree with you on that subject. Well, the strongest campaign. I can understand that argument. What I don't agree with on Legend, I'm just gonna quibble on this. You can consider this a quibble. Let me just say this. You can say a lot of fucking things about Skarbrand, but Legend saying that that you can win this campaign in like 10 turns in a non-cheesy way, that is a load of bullshit. Let me say this. You look at Legend and how he plays Skarbrand. You look at me how I play Skarbrand. You look at anyone who plays Skarbrand. We're all fucking cheesing this campaign. You can win the campaign fairly quickly, sure. You won't win it in 10 turns unless you cheese the shit out of everything. Like, positioning, like moving in force march after fighting a battle so you get enough movement range, positioning yourself right next to a neutral faction territory, and in such a way that when you raise a settlement, you move backwards towards another settlement and all that crap. That is cheese to heavens and back. Oh, but I'm not done. And Bal? This guy? Freaking hell. You know how you play Skarbrand in battle? You send the fucker to solo everything. Powerful. But do you know how you solo everything? He's not Malice Darkblade. Malice Darkblade will literally kill everything in his path. Legitimately. As in, you send him in melee, you AFK for 20 minutes, everything is fucking dead around him. With Skarbrand, no. With Skarbrand, you're abusing AI behavior. You're abusing the fact that AI won't harp hit you if you send them in the middle of an army, especially on higher difficulties. You're abusing their movement. You break the battle AI. That's how you win a Skarbrand. Win minimal damage. You regenerate in freaking combat. And you know what you do? This is what everyone does. You charge from one unit to another to another. I've done a video on this. It was fucking hilarious bullshit. To say that this campaign is strong, fair enough. I accept that. To say this campaign is non-cheesy, that is bullshit. But a lot of people do dislike him. He didn't even win the best demon race poll. Tamarkan did. Just spoiler alert on that. Tamarkan came in first for demons. Not Skarbrand. Granted, it was a competition. But Tamarkan got, 54, 56% of the vote. Something like that. He got over 50% anyway. And he did much better than Skarbrand in that particular polling. And Khorne and Nurgle, like consistently, people don't like the demon campaigns. None of them. None of the races. You know what's been surprising doing all the polling, all the videos and all that? How many people that play these demon campaigns came out to say, I fully agree. Like so many Tzeentch fans, so many people that play Kairos, who enjoy Kairos, who say, I agree completely on everything you're saying, or what people voted for, or both. So yeah, Skarbrand's F tier. This is what people voted on, and not just in one straw poll, or the 2 straw polls, but no, just like comparisons between races. That's just how it is, or comparisons between legendary lords of the demons. You know, it's kind of hilarious on this subject. When Immortal Empires came out, I made a tier list, the first tier list, with my initial impressions. This was just days after Immortal Empires, and I said all the demon campaigns are F tier. So many people gave me so much shit for that. Turns out, almost 2 years down the fucking line, I was correct in everything I was fucking saying for almost 2 years. At least in terms of how the majority of the player base views it. You can disagree, but this is what people voted on. Nowadays, I'd probably put him in C tier, if I'm being honest, but that's just me. I do think Tarax is the better campaign in that respect. I think Valkia is a much better campaign. You want to play a Khorne campaign, play Valkia. Moving on to Kislev, we shall start with the campaign that got the second largest share of the votes, but the one I personally consider the best campaign of Kislev, and it is Boris Ursus. I probably put him just behind Rapunzel based on the results you guys gave me. Now, I personally think Boris has the best campaign. He doesn't have the limitations of the supporters, but he still benefits from invocations. He can wipe out one of the principal threats of Kislev, which is Archaon, fairly early on in his particular campaign. He does have a lot going for him, but he's never been particularly popular as a campaign. In Realms of Chaos, it's really not a great campaign. In Immortal Empires, I feel like too many people just view the campaign as like, oh, you're stuck in the Chaos Wastes. You're not stuck in the Chaos Wastes. You can do a lot with Boris from a diplomacy perspective, from the fact that he has colonization with no cost, and he has 2 ruined settlements just across the sea from him that are close to Kislev. So you can get Prague, then you can get Catherine, you can confederate Kislev. And this is without cheese, for the record. Without relying on cheese, you can still do this. Cheese makes it faster, it makes it better, but you don't have to use that. It's pretty crazy that so many people hate this campaign. I think part of it is the fact you have to unlock it, and also just that starting position that is off-putting for so many people. But at least he came in second in the Kislev poll, unlike Kostaltin, who came in last. And actually, I had an option because I could for Kislev. I had the space. I didn't have this for other races. But for Kislev, there was an option I added, which was basically none of the above. Now, Boris got more than that. It was about 15% of the vote, because basically represented, yeah, Kislev as a race is not great. Kostaltin got 5% of the vote. So he is in Daniel tier, according to your votes. Now, I think that's exceptionally harsh for Kostaltin. He's not my favorite campaign, but I'd probably say he's the second best Kislev campaign to play. Yes, he's better than Astankia. But, yeah, he's just never worked for a lot of people. It's interesting to note that the campaigns that did poorly in Realms of Chaos, like this one, is also one that got voted down significantly by the community. And then we have Astankia, who's gonna go in F tier. She didn't quite get as few votes as Kostaltin, but she certainly did very poorly in the racial polling. She got 7% of the votes, or thereabouts. So basically half of the votes compared to none of the above option. Yeah, Astankia's campaign just doesn't make freaking sense. She has the worst aspects of Kislev. Oh, she has a powerful army. Kislev has powerful armies. The issue is the economy. It's not the units. It's not like super buffing your units. And the mechanic she has is just a poor man's version of Groms. It's like, oh, you can buff each individual unit. That is not a fun experience. It's tedious, boring as dirt experience. Sure, you can win every battle in this campaign with her, but if this tier list is an indication of that, of anything, it's how little people care about that in their campaigns. And then finally, the best campaign for Kislev, it would be Catherine. She got a clear majority of the vote. She is the most popular character of Kislev. She's probably the most popular D tier campaign. No, Lewin did comparatively better. Especially because, well, kind of, it's hard to say really. Like, Bretonnia really got raked over the coals by people in the polling, so yeah, Catherine, you can consider her better than Lewin. From my perspective, like, I'm not sure which campaign is the worst for Kislev. Is it Catherine or is it Estancia? I'm reminded initially, though, when I started covering Immortal Empires, and my initial impression was that Castalton had the worst campaign of Kislev. That opinion has changed, but it's interesting looking back at that and finding how many things actually match my very first opinions. Now, for the record, a lot of people that do watch my channel, that do vote in these polls, and people who don't watch my channel and vote in these polls. That's one of the things about polls. They get a lot of people from elsewhere to also vote that wouldn't watch your videos. But it's interesting with this, with respect to Catherine, Castalton, Estancia, that with Catherine, it's just that iconic character Kislev compared to, Castalton just feeling really weird. But it's interesting thinking about that initial opinion and how currently matches the reality I initially expressed. Lizardmen. This one's gonna be a doozy, let's just say. So, Lizardmen got F tier. And we're gonna start with several of the campaigns that were relatively close to each other, but they're in F tier or close to it. So you got Gorok in D, Krokar in F, Tenuin in F. Basically, these campaigns all work. Don't get me wrong on that. They all work. Gorok is really powerful because he starts a low croak. Tenuin has a significant level of power, but it's dull as dirt. I've played this campaign. I understand the power. It breaks the fucking game. Like, genuinely, that Skaven war breaks the AI of all Lizardmen factions and all Skaven factions. So if you enjoy a campaign where the game is literally broken because of the campaign mechanics, sure. But it's not a great campaign. As for Krokar, he actually was doing reasonably well, but he certainly didn't come as close as Gorok. So yeah, like Tenuin and Krokar are in F tier because they're matching their race tier. Gorok is higher because he did better. And then we have Mastamundi. Fucking Daniel tier. Not quite as bad as Heclis or Daniel himself, but still pretty fucking bad. And then Nakai. Also, not a great campaign. Though, maybe I should just put him in F-, because he did better than Mastamundi, though he also did pretty poorly. Then we have Tic-Tac-Toe. Tic-Tac-Toe is an F-. Yeah, like basically with Lizardmen, outside of one campaign, these three did the best. Did the best. Tic-Tac-Toe did worse. Mastamundi and Nakai did the absolute worst, to the point neither of them might as well have been in the poll, especially Mastamundi. And then we have the best Lizardmen campaign by fucking far, by a landslide. It is Oxyatl, and he's going to be put in B tier. At the end of the line, because Lizardmen did really do poorly in their racial polling, and I think, I could even put him in A tier. For me, he's an S tier campaign. He's the best Lizardman campaign in the game, by far. He's the only one worth playing. But at the same time, while certainly Oxyatl is carrying his race, I can't really put him higher considering the results of the Lizardmen. I would, on a personal level, but that's not what people voted for. Then we have Norsca. No comment. Like, Norsca's trash. Garbage tier. One of the worst voted races in the polls. Absolute trash tier. Not worth playing. Don't bother. Then we have Nurgle. Oh yeah. Good old Nurgle. So Nurgle got D tier in the racial polling, but one Lord of Nurgle did far better than the others. So Epidemius is going to go above virtually all the others, right? His race is still D tier, but he is in Daniel tier, according to your votes. I just think, personally, It is a campaign that works, don't get me wrong on that. I think this is pretty harsh to him, actually. In some ways, he's more powerful than Kugaf, but he's really, really dull to also play. His faction effects just don't mesh well with the way the game is played. That would be my perspective on this, but he certainly did the worst, or one of the worst, of the demon legendary lords. Daniel obviously did the worst, but yeah. Then we have Kugaf, who is going to be put in F-. Yep, I am going to be particularly harsh to Kugaf. Basically, when I did the demon polling, because that's how I did it. I did the demon polling. I didn't do a specific Nurgle polling. I did demon polling. And with Kugaf, it's very clear. Like, to put Kugaf on the same tier as Skarbrand means there's an equivalency. There's not fucking equivalency. Skarbrand smashed the crap out of Kugaf, and the campaigns that are lower on this list, he lost to Tamarkan. And speaking about Tamarkan, I think he's really carrying his race at the moment. Like, this is really a case where in both racial polling and legendary lord polling for the demons, Tamarkan is the clear winner. People associate current Nurgle with Tamarkan. Some people would vote him higher. I can understand that. I just think that while Nurgle has certainly improved from a Daniel tier race to a D tier race, which is not horrible, guys. Just understand that. Like, basically anything above F is playable. It's fine. It's decent. Like, S are the best, S and A are the best, but B, C, and D are still fine campaigns to play. You can agree or disagree on the subject of Skarsnik, and Volkmar and Marcus Wolfhard, but still, they are playable campaigns. Not particularly fun ones necessarily, some of them. Depends on your personal preference. Tamarkan just carries Nurgle. He has the most unique campaign mechanics, he has the plagues, maybe not the best plagues, but his chieftains are genuinely a lot of fun. Like those events you get with those chieftains, like, they make me laugh. It is hilarious. Then we get to Ogres. Yeah, Ogres are actually consistently one of the worst races to poll. Like, yeah, you can argue Wulfric is better, Scrag possibly better than Greasus, regardless. It doesn't matter. They're all Daniel tier. Ogres are going to get a rework. I'll be curious to know how people stand on Ogres once the next DLC comes out later this year. When? We don't know. Or if we do know, we can't talk about it. Hint, hint. Skaven. A-tier race. And we're going to start with Tzeentch. He's going to go in A-tier. So Tzeentch is a good campaign variety, good faction mechanics, interesting campaign situation in Cathay. It just works. And also, if you're looking to confederate other Skaven factions, he's the easiest one to deal with because at least you'll get vision with all those other Skaven factions. So if you're looking to do that, Tzeentch is the one to go for. But then we get Ekeclaw, who absolutely demolishes every Skaven legendary lord by a bit. I don't necessarily agree with that, though I'm starting to really come around that, actually. I'm starting to come around that because with respect to Ekeclaw, he did benefit significantly from the gunpowder updates, ranged units updates. Hell, there's been a recent change that makes sieges less miserable for gunpowder units, actually. And the various things we have discovered in terms of diplomacy, or what the multiplayer community discovered and then passed it on to certain content creators, does make his campaign a lot more viable. So yeah, Ekeclaw dominated Skaven tier list. He ends up winning it. And as for Ekeclaw, as for Tzeentch, probably the best A-tier campaign. Or maybe not quite as good as Grombrindle and Grom in terms of voting, but still, really good campaign. Actually, no. Like, Skaven are an A-tier race. Dark Elves and High Elves are not, so gonna put him right there. Losing my voice. Apologies for that. Then we have Skrulk. So, geez, I feel bad for Skrulk. I really do. He is how to consider this. Basically, Skrulk is I would say he's a D tier campaign based on votes. Like, he did really poorly, but I have to balance it out with the race. So you could make an argument he deserves an F tier spot, fair enough, but he is going to get that D tier, just narrowly avoiding F tier. Though you could genuinely argue on that. To be fair, he does benefit from using the Underway and Illustria, but he's just got nothing special in his campaign, but it is a workable campaign at the very least. That's the thing I said about D tier. It is a workable situation. With that, mind you, the tiers are based on the races, they're based on the polling. Everything I'm saying is fluff, more or less. Beyond that particular point. Then we have Queek. Queek is going to go in B tier. I'd probably put Miao Yang last over here. Actually, I'd put these guys even ahead of... No, like the Dwarves still are a better race. But yeah, I'd put Queek ahead of Axiatl based on the votes. Because Axiatl did very well, but Lizardmen are still a crap race. Queek's just a good campaign, but just no special faction mechanics. It works. It is a campaign that works. He's strong in battle. He's strong in the campaign map. He just lacks the unique faction effects. Then we have Fraught, who probably is between Tyrion and Malekith. Just let's add some separation between the two. They probably don't like each other very much over there. And it's worth pointing out that yes, there is a distance between Malekith and Tyrion, because Malekith came nowhere close to beating Lokir. Tyrion, he had a very stiff competition against Elfarion. He won. But basically Lokir beat the crap out of Malekith. Elfarion didn't for Tyrion. It was pretty touch and go with respect to that. So yeah, Fraught, unique units. He benefits from the climate, from the terrain changes that came with Shadows of Change with Kislev. Actually, I think he's the only one that actually benefited from any change with Shadows of Change. Crazy stuff to think about. But yeah, so Fraught is in a better position than he was before. Then we have this garbage. Oh yeah. Better than... Should I have put him... Yeah, I think he fits between Nakai, who did get some votes, and Mazdamundi, Teclis, who got absolutely fucking none at all, almost. Tzeentch is so bad, and the Skaven have so many Legendary Lords that I did 3 different polls. So I did a general poll, then I did top 3 between Ikakla, Fraught, and Tzeentch. Ikakla won 60% of vote. Then I did a poll between Skrulk, Queek, and Tzeentch. Tzeentch might as well have not existed in any of the polls I did for the Skaven. He is that fucking inconsequential. He's a Legendary Lord that isn't a Legendary Lord, effectively. He might as well be a name Lord that you recruit in another faction. That's how worthless Tzeentch is. Maybe a bit harsh, to be fair, but yeah, people really laugh at this campaign. That's where Tzeentch is. He's absolute meme. Complete meme status. He's a character that only exists so Tariff makes fun of him. Slaanesh, this is a bit harsh. I'm not gonna lie, it is a bit harsh. F-. Yep. Nurgle at least got D tier, but yeah, Nakari is, and even Lizardmen got F. Slaanesh got F-. There's just nothing to this campaign past the early game. And you play it once, you're dead. There's no reason to play it all, because you're going to do the same fucking thing in the early game, and you might have more variety later on, but it's such a miserable experience to deal with that. Absolutely not worth engaging in, not playing in. People do want the Slaanesh remake. It's surprising. Of all the things that people disagreed with me on, right? Or results that people disagreed with, because people did disagree with the results that the community reached. That's fair enough. We all have our opinions. The one thing that's been kind of surprising for me, very surprising, is plenty of people commented on Skarbrand, right? Plenty of people commented on Epidemius. No one commented on Nakari being a crap campaign. Absolutely fucking no one. Maybe if I really search deep, I can find one, maybe two comments out of hundreds, thousands, but virtually that's it. People don't like this campaign. It's like there's so many things to say, but I think you get the deal. Like in the demon polling, Nakari got obliterated. He came worse behind Tamarkan, behind Skarbrand. In the race polling, Slaanesh came in really badly. Not as bad as Tzeentch. Oof. The Changeling is the single worst campaign in the game besides Daniel. And it's not me saying it. It's you guys saying it. The reason I'm putting him so low, it comes down to this. He is the worst Legendary Lord in terms of Legendary Lord polling. And he is the worst voted demonic campaign by far. He's on the same level of votes as Tzeentch. And you know, you could argue Tzeentch deserves at least a bit of a higher tier because at least Skaven got A tier. Tzeentch did not get A tier. Tzeentch is in F fucking minus. I have a paper that wrote all this down because it's hard to memorize all this shit, right? You know, to memorize all this stuff. I don't use a script, by the way, for any of my videos. But yeah, for Tzeentch, horrible situation. Then we get Kairos. Kairos got some decent level of votes, but still, you can argue, jeez, this is pretty fucking terrible. But yeah, Kairos is an F minus because Tzeentch got some votes, so it's not Daniel tier, but don't be pleased about that. It's just not a great campaign. Not a great campaign starting situation, not great campaign mechanics. It just feels very gimmicky. Both Tzeentch campaigns just feel gimmicky. They're trying to make this whole cultist, manipulator thing. Let me tell you this. A good manipulator campaign in a sandbox game is one who uses the inherent game mechanics to manipulate and who has advantages to that. So if Kairos and Changeling could manipulate diplomacy, they'd be in a great position. You can argue, oh, the Changeling can do it. Yeah, it doesn't work because everyone fucking hates demons. Nakari can do it. Surprisingly, fucking Nakari can manipulate better than fucking Tzeentch. So you really don't feel like you're playing a Tzeentch campaign, either from the manipulative aspect or from the magical aspect. You say, oh, Kairos is a great caster. Not in a world where Gelt, Elspeth, Drazov exist. Hell, even characters like Morathi are better casters in the game. Now, to start finishing this list before I completely lose my voice, let's get to Tomb Kings, who got voted in F tier as a race. And quite a few people do want to rework for all of the Undead factions. I'll just go for these relatively quickly because there's not necessarily as much differentiation in these campaigns. So don't think that any of them are particularly great because none of them are, except the vampire counts. And even then, only two of them really are great. Like they just dominated all the others. So for Tomb Kings, starting with Archon, we're gonna put Archon in F tier. He's actually the best Tomb King campaign from my perspective because he does have that extra army, so extra flexibility in his campaign from the very start of it. But yeah, just Tomb Kings are not in a great place, which we can see evidenced by how poorly Cathay did. Like, yeah, not quite as bad as Tzeentch, I'd say, but still pretty fucking bad in a significant number of ways. And similar with Khalida, though she's probably better. She is better. She did get more votes comparatively to Castalten, Alberic, and others. But still, in a pretty dismal state with both Khalida and Cathay. Their campaigns are just not popular at all. I will tell you what is popular, and that is, of course, Cetra, who's going to get a D tier because he won with an overwhelming share of the votes for Tomb Kings. He is the quintessential Tomb King campaign. I guess Archon just feels off to people. He really shouldn't be a Tomb King. I mean, he is, but he's not like a tomb, like the rest of them. Vampire Coast. Oh, there. The Vampire Coast. So Aranessa goes in Daniel tier. Coast got F- in terms of the votes. And Aranessa did not do well at all. She does have her unique units, but I guess people don't find Sartosa appealing, if there's anything that a lot of the polling I've done has indicated. Then we have Noctilus. He is the most appealing. He did win the votes, so he goes into F tier. Necrofex Colossi. What can I say? We then have Silostra. Or I could put... no, let's go with this. Maybe put Silostra a bit lower than Aranessa and Aranessa higher tier, but Aranessa did not do well. So yeah, Silostra is just not popular. A nothing character the Creative Assembly invented for the DLC. I think she would be more interesting if she could get undead Bretonnian units. The models are there, so use them, Creative Assembly. That's what I would say. Then we have Luthor Harkon in F-, came in second. He's going to go in the same tier as the race did. So yeah, that is the Vampire Coast. We then start talking about Vampire Counts. Yeah, Vampire Counts did the best out of all of the undead races, but they're still D tier. And so, in D tier, over here, we are going to have Kemmler in D tier. He's actually a workable campaign. He's actually a lot better than people give him credit for, but yeah, I guess people don't find him particularly appealing. Gorst, people do dislike Gorst quite a bit, so he's going in F tier. Then we have Manfred. Oh, people really do dislike Manfred. Not as much as Gorst, so he's going to be put some positions higher, like even above Rakarth. Let's put him alongside Boris Ursus. Maybe the world will be kind and Boris will stab him or something. I don't need to say anything on Manfred. Okay, people hate Manfred for lore reasons, but his campaign generally is crap. Buxer Nagash, like with Volkmar, like with the Tomb Kings, are just not a good campaign mechanic, suffice to say. Then we have Vlad and Isabella. Both Vlad and Isabella. Technically, it's the same campaign, but one dominated the other. So Isabella's going to go in C tier. Barely, you could argue. She's going to go in C tier regardless. She is actually the strongest legendary lord of the Vampire Counts. Well, you could technically argue Gorst is, but yeah, that's not a fun campaign at all. Isabella works. She gets more heroes. She has a lot of power, those heroes. She starts with Vlad with his items, so she's a powerhouse. But she's obviously second fiddle to Vlad. Oh, yes, Vlad. It does hurt my soul to put him above Axiatl, but hell, he dominates so much compared to these others. These others are losers over here, right? Some more than others. Well, except Axiatl, who's a winner, but Lizardmen are a loser. Vlad is just a very popular character. He's a very appealing campaign, and while you don't have quite the same power as Isabella, it is a campaign that does work. If you're looking to play a Vampire Counts campaign before they get reworked, this is the one you want to go for. Warriors of Chaos, Archaon, S tier. Overwhelming number of the votes, unquestionable, and sorry for that little prompt. Yeah, I do a lot of reading. But Archaon, he earns the S tier vote. He did the best out of all the Warriors of Chaos by quite a bit. And while he didn't quite win as much as the Skaven, Warriors of Chaos did come in ahead of Skaven. So, yeah, he's going to be ahead of Ikekla. Azazel. Oh, man. Poor fucking Azazel. C tier. No discussion. Nothing point. Like, no one cares about this campaign. If you want to play a Slaanesh campaign as Warriors of Chaos, play freaking Sigvald. It's a better campaign in every single way. You have more flexibility. You have a lot more power. It works better, suffice to say. Be'lakor, A tier, came in second. Pretty respectable, solid result. Yeah, just gonna put him over there. Zaytan, Gelt are third place, and Yanbo, well, he may not even deserve that tier. Festus. Ooh. Festus. Well, Festus and Valkia both go in B tier. Actually, that is an interesting conundrum. Should I put them in B? Because, let me be clear. Archaon and Be'lakor smashed all opposition. Like, together, they're two-thirds of the votes by quite a bit. So, yeah, Festus and Valkia, they're in the same tier. They were comparable. Valkia just a bit ahead, effectively. I would even say better than Miao Yang, based on the results. Festus has a better Nurgle campaign than all the Nurgle campaigns. That's no joke. He has more plagues than all the Nurgle campaigns. He doesn't have the chieftains, but he's a Warriors of Chaos, and Warriors of Chaos did much better in the race tier voting. Valkia, she's the best Khorne campaign in the game. Better than Tarks, better than Skarbrand. Simple as that. Oof. Sigvald and Kolic. Well, sorry, Azazel, you're going to go even further down the list, because I got to put you down, because Sigvald is going to take your position. You got to feel bad for the Slaaneshi. Like, all their campaigns are considered trash tier. Every single one of them. I'm not even fucking joking. Sigvald came in, let's be honest, he did come in fifth, sorry. But distant fucking fifth. Actually, I could even argue this, like, legitimately. Like, Sigvald gets D tier. Like, I'm not joking. Like, basically, these four over here, Be'lakor, Archaon, Valkia, Festus, dominated everyone else. Kolic, same as Sigvald, D tier, and then we get Village, who's, well, yeah, we're gonna drop Azazel even further. I might have to check the results on that, just to be certain. I'll do that just right now. Well, on verification, I was wrong. We got to switch these two around. So Azazel goes in Kolic's tier, in the same tier as Kolic, and Sigvald is the least popular campaign of the Warriors of Chaos. Bit of a weird thing. He's still undivided, even if he's Slaaneshi focused. I do think he's a better Slaaneshi campaign, but I did check the results. Village, yeah, he's going in F tier. He deserves it. Second worst campaign. Worst campaign of Champions of Chaos. Sigvald is worst of Warriors of Chaos by quite a bit. Wood Elves. And finally we get to the fucking Wood Elves. After so many hours of work on this. Let me say that making this list has been exhausting. Mentally fucking exhausting. Sisters of Twilight. They get A tier. Like, genuinely better than Yanbo, Zaytan. By quite a bit. They won with a clear advantage compared to everyone else. Wood Elves got C tier. Sisters did incredibly well, so they're going in A tier. I admit I don't like playing with Elves. So there's that. And I do actually enjoy other campaigns a bit more, but I understand it. Like, it's that fact that you can't ignore. The DLC they're part of, very popular DLC. If you want to play Wood Elves, you don't need to buy the fucking Wood Elf race pack. You just play Sisters, and you can get confederations with others. Not Draika, unless you own the pack, but with Orion, with Durfu, yes, you can. So, pointless to even bother with the Wood Elf race pack. In C tier, we get Orion, because he came in second, but, like, yeah, Sisters dominated. It wasn't a competition. Orion is a very broken campaign. They should have fixed him a long time ago. They tried to make him unique with the campaign, the upkeep benefit. It works, but yeah, it's just silly and gimmicky. Surprisingly, he came in second. Poor Durfu, going in D tier. You feel disgusted just even putting him. Let me move him over there. Yeah, he should be ahead. At least Durfu got some votes. I can't say the same about Kolic or Azazel. Just gonna say that. But yeah, Durfu does have his uniqueness. He has Wall Breaker on Treeman, Ancient Treeman. So he does have that power. but, or is it just ancient treatment? Regardless, Dwarf does work. It is a campaign that works. It's just people don't like him. And then in F minus is Draca. Yeah, that was a bit surprising. I would have swapped Orion and Draca. Simple, right? If Wood Elves are in C tier, which they are according to your votes, and Dwarf isn't necessarily the most popular, Sisters are the most popular. I'm not surprised Sisters are the most popular. I am a bit surprised Orion came in second. Like, I admit. Like, I think people should really try out Draca's campaign. It's a lot more fun than people think. But there is... Oof. Let's see the reactions. Let us see the reactions. There might be a couple of mistakes here and there. There's 96 fucking Legendary Lords. I don't think I'm gonna do something like this again. Not like this. Or I might just focus on the really good ones and the really bad ones. Something along those lines, right? Or the Legendary Lords worth talking about. Because some of these are just not worth talking about. But I hope you all enjoyed this. Or maybe not. I'm sure some people are going to be pissed the hell off with some of these results. I know I am. But this is what you guys voted for. This is how you guys feel. Accept it. Or not. That's how life is. Costin signing out.